What a fine mess we're making of this fine planet. If I make it to heaven, one of my first questions for our Maker after where's the ice cream, because heavenly can't be much of a heavenly place without heavenly hash, I think we'll all agree. But the next question, what were you thinking putting us in charge down here? You know us. Short-sighted, only thinking about today. Materialistic, we are what we drink, drive, dress, and drool over. Anthropocentric, thinking we humans are all that matter. Even as insect abundance around the world is declining by 10% per decade, aren't they just bugging us? And recycle that roadkill, pollinate our fruits and flowers, our food for birds, of which there are 3 billion fewer in North America than 50 years ago. Wonder why? In short, our credo is generally me more now. And look where it has gotten us. Penguins could possibly have done a better job at managing this place. Plus, they're sharp dressers. Always ready for the prom with that tux. Bottom line, we tend to think this place is ours to do with as we please. Well, it ain't. And these scriptures remind us of that. First, we weren't the only ones given by a mandate to thrive by our Creator. God instructs other parts of the creation to bring forth swarms of creatures. I mean, wow. First, that verb bring forth connotes sort of an ongoing process, not a once and done, now and forevermore created order, but a dynamic disorder that I think leaves room and perhaps even mandates evolution and revolution, as swarms implies an occupation, emancipation of these living things, and perhaps a recuperation of what has been lost somewhere down the line. And I have to admit that I was surprised when I realized that the Creator also told the other creatures to be fruitful and multiply. Somehow I'd missed that we weren't the only ones given this instruction. Now, we've been more successful, especially lately. Human population has doubled in the past 50 years. Critter abundance has declined by 70% in that same period. And you know the reasons, but chief among which is habitat, as we have paved paradise and put up those parking lots. And as J.B. McKimmons reminds us in his book, The Day the World Stops Shopping, that when we build the shopping malls with their parking lots, the animals who had been residing there don't just move to a new home, they die. Speaking of whales, we almost wiped them out in the 19th and 20th centuries. Some species lost 98%. But again, out of sight, out of mind, except they are a keystone species. Yes, for the oceanic food chain, a whale fall, when it dies and sinks to the bottom eventually, can feed other organisms down there for a century. But also for us, on average, a single great whale sequesters 33 tons of carbon. We create it, they consume it. And whale poop feeds phytoplankton at the base of the oceanic food system, and upon which all sea life depends, and which produces 50% of our oxygen we're breathing. Thank you, whales. In other words, we're not the only game in town. It's not just ours, which native people, the locals, in our reading this morning, have long recognized. It must have been their upbringing or their sensibilities, I don't know, but indigenous people typically see the creation around them as animate, which the rest of us are just now figuring out thanks to the research of people like Suzanne Simard in her book In Search of the Mother Tree, hers focusing on trees communicating with and sharing resources with each other, sort of sentient beings, we might say. And native groups respect creation, prize it really for what it is and for what it graciously offers to us. Up in that Gwich'in community of Arctic Village, where the kids and I just went a few moments ago, and some of you have been on some occasions, on one of our trips, we were present when our friend and guide, Charlie Swaney, Gwich'in hunter, outdoorsman, protector of the environment, shot and killed a cow moose. They do live from the environment around them as they also protect it. After making sure it didn't have a calf, he shot it from our boat as it stood along the banks of the Chandalar River about 100 yards away. Well, this had happened a week or so before a memorial potlatch for an elder who had passed away a year ago. People from villages all around would be coming to their village to celebrate this man's life. And the community didn't have hardly any meat stored up at that point. And here was this beast. Well, and to feed up there, if you want to feed your guests up there, you've kind of got to have meat, because a meal is not a meal without wild meat on the table. Well, flying in hamburger was the next option at $7 a pound. And plus, it's just that imitation meat, we might say. Well, after the animal was skinned and loaded into our boat for transport back to the village, I asked Charlie, why didn't that moose run? I mean, here comes a boatload of humans. There's a village full of hunters a half mile down the river. Why didn't that moose run? Charlie said, it was giving itself to us. It knew we needed meat. Their feeling is that if we take care of nature around us, the nature around us will take care of us. Boy, we violate that principle so much in our world. By the way, just like Naboth, the Gwich'in weren't about to give up their 1 million acres in northeast Alaska in exchange for money during the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act back in the 1970s. What good is $1 million, Charlie says, if your land is gone and the food with it? Back to whales. Pacific Islanders have launched a campaign to have whales designated as persons before the law, just like the Supreme Court did to corporations. Imagine that. This would bring them the right to freedom of movement, a healthy environment, restoration of their populations, and cultural expression. Maybe you've heard that whales in the Pacific can create and pass on songs to their kindred in the Atlantic Ocean, who then sometimes change or delete a verse according to their taste in music. Now, I always thought that the verse in I Saw Her Standing There by the Beatles, that's a band back in the 60s, I always thought that verse said, and the way she looked was wavy on the left. Well, the actual verse, the way the Beatles wrote it, was way beyond compare. I actually would have changed that verse. Yeah. And just as the Beatles are to our culture, whales are essential to many coastal native communities, in part because they know that without Leviathan, the web of all marine life would collapse, said Mere Takoko, a leader of the campaign to legalize whales. So native communities understand that they are not the owners of nature, but partners with nature, which is to be treasured, not sold off to the highest bidder. On to Ezekiel. What's more valuable than clean water? Well, short answer is nothing on this planet. Or any of the other essential features of life on earth, all valuable: soil, air, a stable climate, tranquility. They say constant exposure to noise can whack 2 years off your life. Yet we are passing on to those downstream from us a noisy, polluted, fast-warming, less abundant world. Our friends in Malawi are regularly down to a meal a day, thanks to floods and droughts associated with climate change, which they are not causing. Their annual per-person carbon footprint is 0.09 tons. Ours is 17. They are downstream from our carbon pollution, which makes climate a justice issue for them and all around the world. And other living things, plants, animals. How would you like to be sharing the world with humans if you were one of them? The first picture I'm going to show tomorrow morning at the Lancaster Mennonite High School is of a dead eastern screech owl that I found on a bike ride recently. Auburn feathers. It'll fit in the palm of your hand. It picked the wrong time to cross the road, as did 1 million other creatures that day in the United States. Neither the people of Malawi nor these lovely birds deserve what they have gotten. They just happen to be downstream recipients of our impacts. Nor do those coming after us what we might call generational justice, those who are inheriting all that noise and pollution and carnage that we're leaving behind. I've had several students lately, from elementary age up to high school, ask me with absolute seriousness if they thought there was a chance we'll be able to turn around climate change. They've got a lot invested in the answer to that question, as do all people coming after them and us. Paul and Sandy said they had to start mowing their lawn a month early this year as climate change is advancing the seasons. Well, around the world, there are 30 million people right now that are living in conditions of extreme heat, which means average temperature of over 85. They say by 2070, that's going to rise to 2 billion. What they go do? Where they go? So the earth is not ours, in that we have neighbors, plants, animal, and people, now and into the future, for whom this is their home too, and who don't deserve to be downstream victims of our behaviors. And finally, the earth is the Lord's, full stop. Another reason this place is not ours, it belongs to another. That word stewardship, which we love to use in relation to God's earth, comes from Old English stig, home, and weird ward, steward, minding someone else's home or property. Having the mindset that the earth is the Lord's can revolutionize our relationship to the goodness of this earth. Our current form of materialism, where stuff is a means to an end, status, success, security, is transformed so that we see the bounty and beauty of this earth, the stuff of this earth, as an end in itself, valued for what it is, on loan from the Maker, so that we start to see everything that passes through our hands as precious, valued by God, and to be handled thoughtfully and responsibly. On that same trip to Kansas to the grade school I was telling the kids about, I was there this last fall, and I had an environmental session with the fourth graders, as I always do. And then I have a Kids Around the World session with the fifth graders after the next class up, When I meet with the fifth graders, I then give them a quiz about what we talked about last year. So this past fall, as I was meeting with fifth graders, having met them in the fourth graders and talked about the environment, I asked if they remembered how many trees are cut down every day in the USA to make paper towels. A couple of hands went up. 55,000, they said. I said, yes, you nailed it. And then the real test question, is anyone here in the room still doing the 7 shaky method, which we talked about last year? Which is a way to go and wash your hands in the restroom without using paper towels. After your hands are washed, they're wet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, hit your pants, and your hands are dry. A bunch of hands went up. I was proud. I was gratified. I was hopeful. These kids are treating this earth for what it is, precious. So we have these reminders in Scripture and all around us that the earth is not ours, despite our tendency to act as if it is. Native communities, our downstream neighbors now and in the future, God's intention that all of life flourish, and the confession that the earth is indeed the Lord's. Yes, these are limits to our audacity, our arrogance, our ignorance in thinking that it is ours to do with as we please, but they also present an opportunity to take our place within the circle of life that the Maker has so graciously provided for us, within which we and all things can live long and prosper and find peace in our present moment. Last fall, a group of 35 students and advisors from the Give Club at James Madison University came to volunteer at our Jubilee Carbon Farm west of Harrisonburg, Virginia. Tom Benevento, our coordinator there, arranged and directed their visit. Their plan was to work in our gardens and along the streams on Friday afternoon and Saturday morning, and in between to pitch their tents along the creek running through the property for an overnight camp out. Well, the group actually got to experience a lot of what we're talking about this morning. They got to work alongside indigenous folks from Central America and from East Africa. The place they were working was not ours, but rather a 40-acre parcel on loan to New Community Project from a family right there. In an effort to curb downstream impacts, we are adding riparian buffers along the stream, which previously just had bare banks. And our intention there is to honor nature's rights to be fruitful and multiply, including practicing agroforestry, trees interspersed with the gardens to enhance the habitat while also taking a bite out of climate change. Tom told me last week that they just had Swainson hawks and a bald eagle stop by for a visit. So this was the community these students joined in with that weekend. Well, on Saturday, as the group was preparing to leave, 2 young women from the group came up to Tom teary-eyed. They told him that as they were around the campfire the night before, singing together, sharing together, the sounds of the farm all around, a blanket of stars overhead, they had unexpectedly broken into tears. We'd never before felt so connected to nature, to each other, and to life, they said. All is not lost. As we put ourselves within the community that includes nature, native peoples, and our neighbors, learning from them, joining with them, and giving deep respect to the earth around us and praise to the one who made it, we may yet help creation find the fullness God intended, even as we find our rightful place within this circle of life. May it be so. For the glory of God, for our neighbor's good, for the healing of all creation. Amen.